Pull up. Pull up. Don't sink.
Young British pilots are earning their wings in the skies above Indonesia.
Caution, terrain.
It's one of the most dangerous places to fly in the world.
Don't really want to get into the same situation as he did. It's high risk out here, basically.
With almost no aviation jobs in the UK, Brits with little flying experience are choosing to travel halfway across the planet to get their first pilot job.
When you see something real like today, you do kind of want to put it out of your mind.
The winds can really kick you up the ass.
Stall. Stall.
You feel like you don't have control.
But putting their lives on the line could pay off big time and help them get their dream job with a commercial airline.
Yeah, if anyone from BA Recruitment is watching, I'm really keen to go back and fly in the UK.
That cheeky little air stewardess.
In this episode,
Traffic. Yeah, look at the speed of that.
there's a close call in the mountain rush hour.
Watch out for this guy.
A pilot realizes how far he is from the Western world,
They actually take it off at the second knuckle.
and an election dispute gets out of hand.
You don't want to get too close because you will get hit.
We got to get out of here.
Once there's blood, that's it.
Despite 60 plane crashes in the last 10 years, British pilots are leaving their lives behind to fly the skies of Indonesia.
It does look pretty wet.
The company they work for, Suzy Air, cover a sprawling 750,000 square mile network of mountainous islands, flying to some of the most remote and dangerous airstrips in the world. Most of the pilots hope to gain enough flying experience to land a job with a commercial airline back home. But while they rack up the air miles, everything else is on hold.
Trying to settle down, have a family, that's pretty much impossible in this kind of life. So I guess that's a sacrifice you're going to have to make if you're going to stay out here.
The perils of flying in these unpredictable skies are notorious, and few family men are willing to risk working here.
The impact of something happening to me for my family would be terrifying.
I still absolutely love what I do. You know, could I give that up for a more normal life? I don't know. It's a tough call to make.
It's 5 a.m, and ahead of another grueling day in the air, 34-year-old Matt Dearden is performing his final pre-flight checks.
Right, you little bug up. Don't go in the exhaust.
Matt's been flying with Suzy Air for over 2 years, but a few weeks ago moved base to a different region of Papua.
Where the bloody hell's he going?
He'll now be flying the airline's most challenging remote routes. It's a far cry from his former job as an IT worker in Bristol.
It's tribal and mountains and crazy weather and the most incredible flying I'd ever seen in my life. There's just no way I'd go back to what I used to do. That was just mundane drudgery, you know, whereas now I absolutely love going to work. It's the best thing in the world.
He's flying rice to the Moni tribe in Hita-Dipa. It's located deep in the mountains, a 50-minute journey over 90 miles away.
Alrighty, we're good to go. Oh, very typical. We have some people here just walking across the end of the runway. Yeah, there we go, people. Aeroplanes. Look left and right before crossing.
In this part of Indonesia, people on the runway are far from the only occupational hazard. The mountains, moisture and heat create the perfect conditions for the trickiest weather pilots can experience. Thick, low-lying clouds are a daily hazard that make negotiating a safe landing a huge challenge.
The weather out here, it's always changing. The important thing is just to stay visual with the surrounding terrain. This is not an area you want to be going anywhere into clouds and, you know, reduce visibility. You can just see there's a big mound right underneath that cloud. You can just about see it. Just when you think it's puffy clouds, boom, there's a hill.
landing strip at Hita Deepa is located in the bottom of a steep-sided valley. But as Matt makes a pass to check the runway is clear, the weather conditions are making it tricky for him to get a clear visual.
You can see the airfield here, right below us, but you know, an airplane can't just drop down onto a runway. It has to come in on the approach, which you can see at the minute has quite a bit of cloud and fog on it. So we're just going to have to see whether or not we can sneak through it all in some way. It's going to be tricky.
With a heavy loaded plane, once Matt's committed to diving beneath the cloud cover, there will be no option to abort. Making his task even more difficult, the strip is hidden on a sharp left turn within the narrow valley. The runway itself won't be visible until the very last moment.
It's a hell of an approach, this one. You just have to wonder sometimes, why the hell do you build an airstrip in this position?
Don't sink.
Right now, this is as low as we could go before having to commit. If I went any lower, then we'd be forced to make that landing.
He needs to use all his previous knowledge of flying here to make his final decision on committing to land.
Pull up. Pull up.
Yeah, looking at this, yeah, we can get under this layer here. And we are far too low in this valley to get out of it with the load we got on board, so we are committed to make the landing.
Sink
There is
rate.
no choice.
Don't sink.
Having gone beyond the point of no return,
Still can't see the runway at this minute.
Matt can only hope there are no new obstructions on the strip.
There we go, there's the runway.
Matt touches down, but the wet grass is making it incredibly hard to slow the plane.
Absolutely zero brake connection. What a place to put a runway.
The Moni people have survived on hunting and highland farming for thousands of years.
Much excitement. The rice has come in.
But recently, these government-subsidized flights have provided the villagers with modern medicine and food supplies. The deliveries are welcomed, but it can often be weeks or months between flights.
The job we're doing here, it's obviously a lifeline for these guys. So, you know, it gives you a sense of purpose. You're not just flying an aeroplane around for the sake of it.
But Matt's takeoff is on hold. An argument has broken out in front of the plane.
There's a lot of finger-pointing, a lot of shouting. As if the departure wasn't hard enough, we've now got dozens of people on the runway, so it's crazy.
Raids, revenge killings and ceremonial warfare had largely disappeared in Papua. But when the government introduced electoral politics and Indonesian money to the area, it caused these disputes between villages to flare up again.
Things happen out here. I mean, sometimes they can arrive at the airplane with an arrow through their chest and you sort of medevacing them back to the hospital. Yeah, it's what it is out here. It's Papua for you.
Indonesia's Papuan province contains the most hazardous terrain and weather conditions in the country, and it's home to some of the most dangerous landing strips in the world. They're at their most treacherous in the high altitudes and ultimate remoteness around the Papuan highlands of Wamena. For Suzy Air pilots, flying these routes is seen as the ultimate challenge. And one adrenaline junkie, Danny Malan, is desperate to take on.
For me, I think it's important to move up always in life, because if you stay at one level, I think I'll get really bored.
This is no place for rookies. Pilots have to prove themselves time and time again before they can fly these routes.
Don't sink.
And only the very best get to take on the perilous airstrips. 26-year-old South African Danny left his homeland in search of adventure and is determined to make the most of his time in Indonesia.
I came to Indonesia just to see the area, and it was a great way to see Asia as well. Especially with all the holidays we're getting, it's a nice opportunity to just travel around and then to come and fly in Papua in the mountains here. It is a big challenge, but I like it. It keeps me awake.
Having worked for Suzy Air for 3 years, today Danny is taking a test to prove he's up to flying the extreme routes from Wamena. He'll be under the watchful eye of veteran British pilot Steve Walton.
Key point 3,800 feet. Basically, if I get this one more mountain strip ticked off, that'll mean I've been to all the mountain strips we've got here out in Papua, so it'll be a big accomplishment.
To pass, Danny must execute a perfect flight, landing the 12-seater Cessna Caravan in the small mountain village of Holuan, over 30 miles away. It is a test of his skill as a pilot and his nerves.
The guys in Papua have to be at the top of their game. It does require a lot of training. Even small mistakes can claim lives. Pilots get too comfortable and then they slip up.
A little bit nervous with Steve looking at me, make sure I do everything correctly by the books. Yeah, so definitely a little bit of pressure there.
The test will take place under full flight conditions, with a plane full of passengers on board.
Sky traffic, Bravo to Zulu is now rolling.
Holuan is renowned for its strong winds, which frequently blow planes off course towards the surrounding mountains. It's one of the most notorious approaches in Papua.
Some strips you can't go in after 10 o'clock, otherwise history tells us that it's too windy and people crash, so we just don't go in.
Have there been any Suzy Air crashes over here?
We had one crash, yeah. But I don't particularly want to talk about that at the moment.
There have been 3 fatal crashes in Suzy Air's 10-year history, but it was the crash nearest to the Wamena base that affected Steve and Danny most personally.
Most of us in Suzy have lost somebody. Well, 2.5 years ago, we all lost somebody. Quite a close mate who actually did his training with me.
There's a few plane wrecks out there in the mountains, and that's kind of a constant reminder to be careful out there. One of them was one of my best friends, and I still miss him today.
We had 3 accidents in really short succession. It affected almost everybody. Morale was really low, made us question what we do.
I'm pretty sure my friend would have wanted me to keep on flying. Pushing limits, that's what we like to do, and that's what I'm constantly trying to do.
For pilots like Danny, the challenging conditions are what make flying in Papua so exhilarating.
7 miles to the southeast of the field, 4,500 feet, Johnny Valley overhead.
As they approach the strip, the dangers are immediately apparent. Holuan is one of the narrowest and steepest strips for a caravan to land on in Papua. With its poorly maintained condition, it leaves Danny with no room for error. Land too early and he will hit the rough, rocky surface at the front of the strip. Land too late and he won't have time to bring the plane to a halt before the thick stone wall at the end of the runway.
I have got passengers on board, so if at any point I tell you to go around, just go around. Unless obviously you've called committed. Yep.
500.
Right, center finished approach. Fuel tanks both on. Terrain switch is inhibited. Up to full. Right, now ground speed 99, getting 84 still. We'll possibly a little bit high. Yeah. There. Still a little bit high, here we go. A bit bumpy, tailwind's increased a bit.
Steve isn't happy with Danny's approach. If he maintains this altitude, he will land too far along and run out of track.
How does the profile look to you now? Still looks a bit high, okay. Still a bit too high, man. Feels alright to me. Let's just do a go around, yeah? Alright, going around. a little bit high, and we'll come in again.
At the last minute, Steve aborts the landing, instructing Danny to make a second attempt.
Keep an eye on the runway, and I'll give you speed on finals.
If Danny doesn't impress Steve with his next approach, he may miss out on his dream of joining the select few Suzy Air pilots qualified to fly these routes.
So this still high. Watch out for that wind. Watch out, slow down. Oh, it's definitely beating a little bit.
Danny's brought the plane down safely and smoothly.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Yeah, I'm pretty happy getting this one done. I think I'll be comfortable flying in here on a regular basis with the passengers and a normal co-pilot. So yeah, I feel pretty good about it already.
But it's Steve who'll decide whether Danny's done enough to progress to the ultimate challenge of flying these strips.
A bit high on the approach, but we corrected that when we did go-around on the first one, and that was all fine. It's good. It's always good to see the go-around as well. He can self-check himself, empty into more mountain strips in the future, and then from there, always good to go.
Danny is now ready for a move to Wamena to join the Suzy Air Elite, but for now he's returned to his base in Nabire. He shares a house with 4 other Suzy Air pilots. They're all single. Balancing a family life with a job is next to impossible.
I really would love to go back home maybe 1 year or 2 years from now. I'm looking for a girlfriend to start off and hopefully for the future a family.
Nearly all the Suzy Air pilots are under the age of 30, but grandfather Robin Rudderham is the exception.
That must be a complete sucker, doesn't it?
At the age of 54, after his marriage broke down, Robin from Essex left behind friends, family and a job as a plumber to make a completely new start.
At the time, I'd already got my private pilot's licence, and I thought, why not turn your hobby into a job?
To be honest with you, I feel like a big 25-year-old, really, reliving my youth out here with the guys.
I miss my children and my family. I quite often get phone calls from my daughter saying, Dad, why don't you come back home? But I want a challenge, and that's what I'm here for.
For the last 4 months, Robin's been flying in the built-up lowlands of Papua, ferrying commuters along the monotonous lowland route between the towns of Biak and Serui.
After you've done it sort of 4 times a day, 6 days a week, it becomes a little bit tedious.
So now Robin's heart is set on taking the huge step up to flying the dangerous yet exciting routes in the mountains.
As soon as I got here and sampled the flying, I knew straight away that's where I wanted to come back.
The only way that will happen is if he gets hands-on experience of how to cope with the threats.
You look at some of the airstrips and you'll find sort of wrecked aeroplanes laying on the side of the runway. It's a dangerous place, very dangerous.
As housemate Danny is fully qualified as a mountain captain, he's going to mentor Robin on his first mountain flight. Once Robin's proved he has the necessary skills, he can then apply to move up to Danny's level.
Some of these strips are real tricky, like you can put yourself in a really dangerous position. Good luck, Rob. I think you're gonna need it.
Nabire, Papa Kilo Bravo Victor Sierra is now ready for departure, runway 34. Be clear for takeoff.
Danny may be less than half Robin's age, but in the mountains he's the veteran and Robin's his apprentice.
Like if it's your first time in the mountains, you take it slow, man. Like I'd set up the aircraft at a slow airspeed, take my time. Especially in the mountains, there's no rush.
Big learning
curve. It's like going from primary school to high school. So your last year in primary school, you think you know everything, and you're back to level 1 again.
That's right.
Halfway into their journey from Nabiri to Fawi, there's a stark reminder of how badly things can go wrong as they fly over Pogapa, the site of 2 recent crashes involving other airlines.
Yeah, this is where the guys had the accident.
Now I can see clearly now both aeroplanes at the airstrip.
Yeah, so...
You can quite clearly see it now. It's run off the side of the runway.
Yeah.
And then the other aircraft at the top of the strip on the left-hand side is another one that's up to grief. Difficult to make out, but it definitely looks like damage to the front there.
But you know, now you can see that the surface isn't all the greatest.
It's not good,
You can
no.
just imagine that with the slope as well.
And if it's wet,
How tricky that could be.
it's quite daunting really to think how easy pilots have problems here. Sort of brings it home to you a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. Just shows you how an airfield can catch you out here in the mountains.
The crashes at Pogapa mean that it's not safe for caravan planes to land there. But the smaller, more nimble Porter planes still do. Today, solo pilot Matt Dearden is making the journey with an aircraft packed full of rice and local Moni people.
At school, I was the kind of geeky kid, you know, always on the computers, and to now be out here in this like paradise, basically, flying $2 million aircraft into the mountains and getting paid for it. I mean, I wouldn't even have imagined it when I was a kid at school. And I suspect if any of my teachers are looking back at school now, they probably wouldn't have imagined that either. They would have probably imagined me sitting, as I was, in a 9-to-5 IT job in Bristol.
Don't sink.
To land safely on the sloping airstrip at Pogapa, Matt has to slow the plane whilst battling the heavy tailwinds, whipped up from the low valley to the left of the strip. But slow too much too soon, he risks stalling the plane and landing heavily. He doesn't want to end up the 3rd crash on this strip.
When you see a wrecked aircraft, it does bring it home, the risks out here, and you know, if you get it a bit wrong, it could be the last thing you get wrong.
This is an awful approach. Very windy at the moment.
Stall.
He touches down heavily on the rough surface.
Oh, we've broken him, oh God.
But Matt and the rest of the plane are intact.
That was a horrible approach, mate. Horrible.
Pogapa is a small mountain village of 400 Moni tribal people. But Matt isn't the only Westerner here. 62-year-old American John Cutts moved out to Papua with his parents when he was just a child.
Hi there.
Hi,
Matt.
Matt. Glad to meet you. My name's John.
John, I've heard of you. I've heard. You're the guy who lives here, eh?
Well, I've been here. I've been here since I was 2 years old. Grew up down valley and here and all the way over to Itaripa, so been around for a long time. This was my first language, the Moni language.
That's fantastic.
Today's an important day in Pogapa. The local Moni people are amassing from the surrounding area to cast their vote in the national elections.
They dance a lot then.
With a keen interest in the tribal people, Matt takes advantage of meeting John to find out more.
They come hooting and hollering and they kind of announce, we've arrived from this village, and then they dance around and everybody listens. This is a group that just showed up, and so now they're saying, we're here, we brought our votes, and take a look at us, you know?
I mean, you certainly wouldn't get anything like that in England. I mean, you know, you vote for Tory or Labour or anything like that, you know, you're not going to be dancing down the streets of London going, Tory, Tory, you know, or anything
Actually,
like that.
I don't know that any of our elections in any of our countries are quite as exuberant and in your face, kind of like here. You know?
I mean,
So-
you know, I've never seen anything like it.
There are over 2,000 Moni people living in the surrounding mountains. Although contact with the outside world has provided them with resources they would never have had access to otherwise, for many, hunting with bows and arrows is still an essential part of their way of life. But some of the arrows are not for hunting animals.
He says, we made this one for people.
Oh, that's purely for
Mbole,
people.
and for war. They have very blunt ones that just have a blunt end on it
Right.
here. That's to stun a bird, like a bird of paradise. You don't want to get blood on it, and so you
Sure,
just
yeah.
want to stun it. And then they've actually got these with barbs on them. They do that for the marsupials, what they call couscous. Marsupials, it goes in, and then the marsupial has hands, and it can actually pull it out. And so if they use one of these, it'll just pull it out and keep on going. Whereas when it's got the barbs on, it's stuck in there.
and then that's it. Yeah.
Constantly, every day while you're out walking around to villages, hunting and stuff, they're shooting at stuff, practicing. Aussi, ziapa, ziapa, ziapa. Ouais, bien bas. Come on. Daye.
Pressure's on.
I know.
I feel for him.
Oh,
Straight in.
He says, you see that animal? It's rolling over.
There you go.
That
was a good shot, and it's gone right on the ground there.
While the men run the risk of being speared by an arrow in battle, ancient custom dictates that women must make their own sacrifice for their loved ones.
It's part of their culture. When a close relative dies, they actually take it off at the second knuckle. Let's see. Many times it's their kids that they're cutting their fingers off for. She said, this was my dad. And she said, this was one of my sons. I took my finger off for that.
That's just
astounding.
You know,
it is. What they used to do is they would take the finger and they would put a little hole in it and they would hang it around their neck. So they literally were carrying a dried finger around their neck for 2 or 3 or 4 years later. And it would be, you would see people with these fingers dangling on their neck, and you would know that that was their reminder of their relative that passed away. Yeah. He says, when we're cutting our finger off, people have to be holding us because it hurts so much. People are holding us. Yeah. Yeah.
Working as a pilot in the remote tribal regions of Indonesia is one of the most exhilarating, rewarding jobs in aviation. But the job comes with sacrifices.
We're probably going to expect a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
56-year-old divorcee Robin left behind children, grandchildren and a stable job in plumbing to pursue his dream of flying in the mountains of Papua.
It was a big wrench to leave. It was. Yeah, I won't deny that. But I'm not prepared to sort of sit in my rocking chair just yet. I want to live life and live life to the full.
Today he's being mentored by experienced mountain captain Danny in the hope of proving he's up to becoming a mountain captain himself. Danny is taking him along one of the region's most hazardous routes.
As you can see, mountains around us, left and right.
Known as the Freeway, the 140-mile-long valley between Nabire and Mulia is the busiest mountain route in the whole of Indonesia.
Traffic. Watch out for this guy.
It's a far cry from the quiet routes Robin currently flies in Papua's lowlands.
But you can see how fast it is, the closing rate between two aircraft. Yeah, look at the speed of that thing.
It's a tiny aircraft, that's why it looks like far away, but it's actually close.
Many of the smaller aircraft using the freeway don't carry transponders, the device which allows them to appear on other planes' warning systems. So Robin and Danny are forced to keep an eye out.
I think this is one of the helicopters that doesn't have
it doesn't have a transponder.
No, the mode. Let's keep the lights on so they can see us. It's all nice and good now, good weather, but just imagine the next flight we have a lot of cloud built up because it happens real quick in the mountains. So we can even have clouds between us and this guy when we won't have it visible at all. Traffic. Wait, look at this traffic behind us rolling as well.
There have been 128 crashes in just 20 years in Indonesia, and near misses are a regular occurrence on the freeway.
I'm just going to stay right of track now.
Yep. This guy might even level off 8.5.
But if he's to become a mountain captain, the father of 3 will face these dangers on a daily basis, something his children are increasingly concerned by.
My family do worry about me. Some of the accidents and problems we have in Indonesia get to hit the news back in the UK. I think my daughter wishes I was back home, flying back home.
The day has been an eye-opener for Robin, and his first taste of the unique dangers of flying in the mountains.
It is more risky, it's more challenging, it's dangerous. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Oh, there you go, look, we can sit down here.
Robin needs a lot more experience to move up to mountain captain, but he's more than happy with his decision to leave his life in the UK behind.
It took a lot of courage, I think, to have such a big, fast change of lifestyle. I stuck my all into it and stuck it out, and 2 years now in Indonesia, I'm absolutely loving it. It's, I've got no regrets whatsoever, none at all. Cheers, guys. Cheers.
Have a good day, Papua.
Yeah. Now I've been out here and sampled what this country has to offer. I'd like to stay here. I'm happy here doing what we're doing.
Deep in the mountain heartland of Papua, Matt Dearden's landing in Topogapar has cost him a mudguard. He needs to remove it to avoid it becoming dislodged on his next flight.
There you go. Another casualty of Papua.
But he's lucky that's his only problem. Things went far worse for the pilots of the nearby wreckage of recent crashes.
It's always a harrowing thing seeing this is, you know, a pretty new-looking airplane. And yeah, here's where it's laid to rest. No passengers on board, just the two pilots. Apparently they walked away, so they were pretty lucky for that. This must have come in pretty bloody hard. The left wing's got a ferrule dent in it, so it's probably got a bit of twisting force there, and it's just cracked this window here.
Crashes in Papua are unfortunately frequent. I have lost some good friends here. In fact, one of my best pilot friends was just killed in a plane accident 2 days ago. And these are people who have spent their lives out here flying, and it's just a reminder that you really need to be hyper vigilant at all times when you're flying.
Yeah, I mean, look at it there. I mean, the wing is obviously just shoved back, and then it's just twisted the fuselage right at the root of the wing there. Yeah, this plane's probably never going to fly again.
Matt isn't the only visitor to the remote Moni village. Today, the national elections are being held. Rival villages from across the vast valley have descended on Pogapar to vote. Accusations of vote rigging between different factions have led to a tense face-off. And it doesn't take much for the situation to get out of hand.
Crazy. Don't get hit. They're getting ready to crank up a rock fest here. They're all picking up rocks and winging them. Once there's blood, that's it. You will not be able to clear them off the runway, so...
We got to get out of here.
You don't want to get too close, because you will get hit. I have been on a rock fest here on this runway, hundreds of people throwing rocks. I tried to walk into the middle to stop it. They kept right on going.
Matt decides to make a hasty exit.
What a strange end to a beautiful day. Yeah, there's a lot of tension in the air, I guess. Guess that's politics for you. You know, I've probably learned more than I've learned in the last year and a half out here flying in Papua. I mean, that's what makes life out here just so interesting, you know?
While the flying might be exhilarating, it does come at a cost. Working as a pilot in the mountains can be a lonely business.
I mean, the flying out here is just, it's some of the best in the world. You just can't beat it. If I was to find any flying job after this, it's not going to compare. But yeah, I mean, it's an isolated kind of existence. You know, sometimes you're here by yourself, one airplane and one pilot. So, you know, you come home to an empty house. And yeah, I mean, sometimes that plays on your mind. You're like, yeah, it would be quite nice to come home to a family and things, you know, have a bit more of a normal kind of existence. But it's the kind of sacrifice you're making here. You know, you can't have everything.
Although they are few and far between, there are some pilots attempting to juggle the job with a stable family life. Originally from London, Ashok Sharma once worked a steady 9-to-5 job in financial services.
did professional qualifications in wealth management and basically had a career doing that for over a decade, 12 years or so, before I finally thought, okay, well, I'm not really enjoying this as much as I ought to.
At the age of 35, he packed it in and started training to become a pilot.
I was having a midlife crisis. It was almost a snap decision that I made, just to say, okay, look, I'm really fed up of doing this. I want to do something that I really wanted to do for a long time.
4 years later, he's trying to rack up experience in Indonesia.
Okay. When I left flight school, I was under the impression that I'd be able to just put applications out and get a lovely job in a 737 in Europe. That was my hope.
For anyone from BA Recruitment is watching, I'm really keen to go back and fly in the UK.
Ashok now has a wife and baby son, but he's forced to spend over half his time away from them. They're based 1,600 miles away in Hong Kong.
Hi, it's... Oh, looks like Ari's still awake. I miss him really badly. He's 8 months old now, so it makes me feel terrible whenever I go. You're ba. I'm da.
Today, Ashok and co-pilot Mark are flying passengers from Medan to Mulabon en route to Banda Aceh, an area devastated by the 2004 tsunami.
Selected, flight level change 110, happy with that? Happy with that, and gauge autopilot, you're done. Okay.
The dangers of flying here are something that my wife is conscious of as well, and it's something that makes us both uncomfortable. The impact of something happening to me for my family would be terrifying.
Today's flight path takes them on a coastal route, and thick clouds are building that could turn into thunderstorms, something which can cause enormous damage to these small planes.
If you get the big ones, they can go up above 35,000 feet. When they get to that sort of size, they can do some serious damage to a little aeroplane like this.
The weather will throw a thunderstorm at you out of nowhere. If we do go into a really dangerous one, the changes of the wind can mess the aircraft up and spoil the lift.
There's just no clear way through these clouds at the moment, is there?
The wind will blow you up and down thousands of feet per minute, and to a point where sometimes you feel like you don't have control.
We need to make sure the passengers aren't thrown around too much. One of the guys that left from Medan a little while ago had a situation where he absolutely had to go through some pretty serious weather, and one of his passengers was thrown up to the ceiling so badly that she cut her head open and had to go to hospital. So if we can avoid turbulence, then we do. I've just reset the heading to 230.
Approaching Mulabon, the cloud is thickening fast. The pilots will have to navigate a safe route through the danger.
We aim for the blue all the time, so there'll be times where you'll see two big clouds standing next to each other, closing in, and you just got the blue straight forward and you're just pushing it as hard as you can to get through it before it closes up.
I have to go through a thunderstorm to get there, but...
As the cloud closes in, torrential rain batters the plane.
This is very good. Let's check. I'll reset that. Maybe best if we take just go downwind and then come back for 1-4. Okay.
Lightning can hit the aircraft and cause structural damage, which can cause the aircraft to come down.
Whenever we're in the cruise or climbing up to the cruise, we're looking at where we can go. It might be a beach, it might be a field that looks nice and flat. It becomes often a matter of looking down and saying, well, there's a river there. We could probably put it down in the river if the worst came to the worst.
That's why you get some crashes with small aircraft going into massive thunderstorms. It's just because the plane can't physically endure that sort of beating that the thunderstorm's giving it.
To the left, go through that gap over there.
En route to Banda Aceh in the north of Indonesia, pilots Ashok and Mark are trying to navigate their small caravan plane through heavy thunderstorms. As they near the landing strip at their first stop, Moulabon, Ashok will have to decide if the conditions are safe enough to bring the plane down.
Alright, so we've got over 5k viz.
Despite the torrential rain, he's confident the visibility is good enough to attempt a landing.
From Victor November, turning final 14. Speed check, turn flaps 20 selected.
500.
And I'll go easy on the brakes as well. Yeah.
With so much water on the runway, aquaplaning is a major concern. They could lose traction and skid off course. But some careful braking brings the plane to a safe stop. This region of Indonesia was left devastated by the Boxing Day tsunami in 2004. Suzy Air was one of the few airlines willing to land in the area in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. The goodwill the company generated in those months has helped fuel its success ever since.
The sign over there said it was 2,600 tons worth of ship, and we're 5 kilometers away from the sea. So that's a big old ship that's been shifted by a very powerful wave. Some kids that are like 5 months and 1 month old.
The country is still rebuilding, but this area of the world will always be volatile, and Ashok has decided to base his wife and son in Hong Kong while he works here.
We're in Indonesia, it's part of the Ring of Fire. There's volcanoes going off, and there are frequently earthquakes just off the shore. A tsunami is something that's always an ever-present threat. So looking at this does make me feel that we as a family made the right decision setting up in Hong Kong.
But being away from his young family so frequently takes its toll, and Ashok is more focused than ever on the dream job back in the UK.
Oh, hello. It would be amazing to get a job flying back in the UK or even back in Europe, just so that I would be in a more familiar environment and we'd be closer to friends and family at home.
Flying the porter-plane in the remote regions of Indonesia can be a lonely existence. With no stewardesses or even co-pilots, sometimes the only company the pilots have is the plane's emergency warning system.
Trim, trim, trim.
Oh, shut up. I love her terrain one is the best one. Caution, terrain, as you're basically about to crash into a mountain. So she's just so calm. She's my mistress, you know, you better obey her. Otherwise, yeah, she'll start getting all angsty.
Matt Dearden is flying solo to Apoa, deep in the Papuan Mountains.
We couldn't get in here the other day due to the cloud and the rain that was just completely closing out the valley.
Recent heavy rainstorms have waterlogged the landing strip, preventing any planes from getting in. Matt hopes the runway has dried out enough to allow him the traction he needs to slow the plane.
No braking at all on that side. That is muddy. It's the reason I don't wear nice shiny black shoes.
Matt's here dropping off and picking up Dani people stranded by the recent bad weather. For these remote mountain villages, Suzy Air provides a welcome link to the outside world. The only alternative, an epic 3-day hike through the jungles and mountains of Papua.
There is a lot of people want to get out of here. You can see there's quite a lot of argument. We've only got 7 seats in the airplane, so 7 people get to go. The rest are going to have to stay behind. A lot of arms waving around. Main thing to watch out is that they don't damage the airplane, because obviously if they damage that, no one's going anywhere. Kenapa? Ya, saya harus cek sabuk dulu. Kas turun, Pak, kas turun. Semua kas turun, Pak. Kas turun. Mana semua kas turun. Kas turun. Nggak bisa, satu harus keluar.
Right now we've actually we've got 8 people in the aeroplane. We've only got 7 seats, so I'm going to have to try and get one of them out. It's already causing a lot of tension. There's a lot of shouting.
Matt has no one for backup when he has to deal with these disputes between locals, many of whom don't even speak Bahasa, the national language.
It's not unusual to get a guy hopping on the plane with full weaponry, you know, machetes, bows and arrows, that sort of thing. You know, there's no kind of body scanners and, you know, what you get back home in the normal airport there. You've just got to trust that the guy sitting behind you with a machete is, he wants to get to his destination, so it's just part and part of living and working in Papua.
Right, we got 7 seats and 7 people. Let's check the seatbelts. Check the seatbelts on the other side, and then we can get out of here before it kicks off again.
It's not just at work where Matt finds himself alone. As a single man of 34, his thoughts are starting to turn to fatherhood.
Away we go.
But being a mountain pilot and maintaining a long-term relationship is easier said than done.
You know, the only chance I get to meet other girls is on holiday. At the back of my mind, I do kind of think, yeah, maybe it would be quite nice to sort of settle down, have a wife, have a couple of kids.
I'll do this for as long as I'm enjoying it. You know, ultimately I probably will settle down somewhere and, you know, probably have a slightly more normal existence in the world. But it's one of the world's last true wildernesses, you know, with some seriously unique people and unique ways of living. As pilots here, it's just, yeah, really lucky guys. I love it. Love my job. Love my life.
Matt and nearly 200 other Suzy Air pilots continue to live out their dreams, flying in the deadly skies of Indonesia.
A look at a mounting trend tomorrow on 4. Get a piece of Deceased Beasts with all creatures great and stuffed. That's at 10. Now, Sunday night we had magic, escapism, illusion and Barry from EastEnders catch up with episode 1 of the brilliant Houdini on 4OD. Class is in session next though, the brand new series of Educating the East End on the way.